Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's NXT review. Now, this was the show after NXT Stand and Deliver, the WrestleMania of NXT. So, obviously, this is a very big show to see where NXT is going to be going through the trajectory of the next year, potentially. And this show was filled to the brim with things that we need to be focusing on. So, we're going to jump into everything. We're going to jump into everything that's the most important. Now, some of the backstage segments we obviously leave out just because there's no need to talk about them until they become a bigger subject. But we talk about pretty much everything. I believe there's probably 10 topics we need to hop on. So this will probably be a relatively long video, just like last night's NXT review or Raw review. But we're going to jump into everything. This is the April 7th, 2026 NXT review. I'm actually really excited to dive into this one just because it's the NXT after Stand and Deliver, and it normally delivers just like Stand and Deliver. So I'm excited. Obviously, Stand and Deliver was one of my favorite pay-per-view or PLEs of NXT's history, honestly. I loved every single match about this PLE at Stand and Deliver. I think that every match banged, and now, especially after seeing NXT, it's going to be a great year for NXT going into next year's 2027 Stand and Deliver. So let's hop right into it. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. We do daily professional wrestling content, whether that's reviews on AEW, TNA, or WWE, or just talking about professional wrestling, whether that's news, rumors, whatever, and anything and everything we talk about over on this page. So if you want to be in for it, make sure to hit the subscribe button because we're growing really fast. And if you want to become an OG, hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, enough of the yapping, let's get into it. We started off with Tony D'Angelo coming out there, and obviously he won the championship away from Joe Hendry at Stand and Deliver whenever he was in a match with Joe Hendry, Ethan Page, and Ricky Saints, and this was a impactful promo. Tony would come out and say that now he's always been overlooked during his career, but now after winning the NXT Championship, he is not a man in NXT, he is the man. And we know, for the longest time, Tony D'Angelo was a mid-card guy, and he was up until the point whenever Oba vacated that title. So now we see Tony D'Angelo come back, we see him turn into a different version of himself after leaving the family, and now we see him complete phase 1 of beating Dark State and taking them out, and then completing phase 2 of winning the NXT Championship. So Tony is done with all of his phases, which makes people believe that potentially we could be seeing him go to the main roster. I'm not fully on board with that yet. I think there's still a lot he can do, but I am confident in saying that we could potentially see that one day. Relatively soon, maybe. Potentially we see Tony D'Angelo up to the main roster pretty soon. I think that's going to be up in the air until we get a little bit more information, but I will definitely keep you guys posted. But what I thought was the most important was how the crowd was chanting the "You Deserve It" chants. That's always one of the best things you can possibly get after you win a championship, and especially for Tony being a guy that was in the mid-card for pretty much his whole entire career up until 2 months ago, and him getting the "You Deserve It" chants after him winning the NXT Championship is a special moment for him, and honestly, I think it was definitely relieving for him because it was honestly a float-or-sink situation for WWE. If the crowd didn't enjoy this Tony D'Angelo run and him winning the championship, they would have definitely been in deep waters, but now it looks like they're getting to the shallower part. They're getting to the part where WWE can trust Tony with a championship, and especially since the crowd likes it, I think that they'll definitely be on board with having Tony D'Angelo keep that title, which also is another talking point where eventually we'll probably see Dark State try to go after that NXT Championship, especially Dion Lennox after he breaks away from Dark State. Whether that's down the line or not, that could be another reason why we see Tony D'Angelo be held up down in NXT, just because they want to precede that rivalry. But I don't think it's a reason to keep Tony down in NXT. But either way, we would see this segment kind of keep on going. And as soon as Tony would say that there is not a man who can beat him for the title, we would see Joe Hendry come out. And one statement that I loved that Joe said that if Ricky and Ethan was not in the match, would this be the same outcome? Would Tony winning the championship still be the same outcome? And I thought that was really interesting because Joe Hendry's got a point. Joe Hendry won that championship just 2 months ago in a ladder match where it shocked all of us. If you want to go back to that review and watch that, it's on the page now. We reviewed that as soon as it happened. We were all shocked about it. But then we're seeing Tony D'Angelo kind of be shocked by Joe Hendry, and Joe would come out and say, hey, listen, if Ricky and Ethan was not in this match at Stand and Deliver, would I be missing my NXT Championship right now? And that's one thing that I thought was most impactful. And the fact that WWE had the nerve to have Tony D'Angelo and Ethan Page be set for next week is criminal. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it tells us that it's going to be Joe Hendry winning that title back from Tony D'Angelo. And it's probably going to be 9 times out of 10 Ricky Saints interfering in that match between Ethan and Tony and getting involved. And by the looks of it, after tonight's NXT, it looks like WWE is going to regroup and get that Fatal 4-Way back together and make it at another PLE, which is just disappointing because we don't need this match, this Fatal 4-Way again. We know the outcome's either going to be Joe or it's going to be Tony, and Ethan and Ricky have no chance right now because in the end of the day, they're going to end up going against each other because we've already seen the Vanity Project kind of branch out into the Blake Monroe storyline. So WWE has slowly pulled back the Vanity Project, and they've slowly pulled in Ethan and Ricky where they could become closer, and now we're going to see them feud, which is a beautiful thing to see. It's always cool to revisit rivalries, and it's kind of like a little Easter egg to date back to what we saw during their rivalry before and kind of put it into the rivalry we're seeing now. But we would end up seeing many things happen, like Dark State attacking them at the end of the promo, which I definitely thought was something that people were going to pass over. Obviously, Dark State attacking them, many people would be like, man, that's not too much of an important part. I think it's really important. Because we remember at Stand and Deliver, Dion Lennox attacked Miles Bourne after his defense against Johnny Gargano, and we would end up seeing Saquon Sugars be really disappointed at Dion Lennox that he did not let them know that he was attacking Miles Bourne. But as it looks this time, it looks like Dion has let Saquon and the rest of Dark State know that he's going to attack these guys, and now they're all on the same page. So this means the Dark State's on the same page again, which is definitely dangerous for the rest of NXT, and it looks like they're going to be trying to take things over, which I definitely thought NXT would have went with a different approach if they were going to have Dion leave Dark State this early. But either way, I think NXT clearly sees the potential that Dion has. I think they kind of want to rush Dion up a little bit, and planning that little seat at Stand and Deliver is going to be something we have to date back to, which is something you have to just engrave in your memory. And whenever things get a little bit chippy with Dark State, you got to remember, Dion went behind Saquon Sugars and the rest of Dark State's back and said, hey, I'm going to go attack this guy without y'all knowing and go after a singles title, which John Cena said I was best at. So Dion Lennox has found out his own path. He's going to be able to go after that own path, and WWE is going to eventually let him branch out into that, let him get away from Dark State, just like how we're seeing with Tony D'Angelo, which was the best thing for Tony's career, so I'm assuming it's going to be the best for Dion's too, which I'm still excited for. I think it's going to be really fun, and this opening segment was just really fun to see anyway, just because after Stand and Deliver, it's always fun to see where they're going, and this right here was a clear example that we're going to be able to see either potentially Dion Lennox leave Dark State, or we're going to be able to see that Fatal 4 be revisited, which a lot of people, I feel like WWE expected this to be more of an exciting moment, but in the end of the day, we all know it's going to either be a good in-ring match, or it's just going to be a match that we're just not too excited for, which I wouldn't be excited for anyway, just because we've already seen it once at the biggest show of the year, and they can't show out any more than they did. So I think that the Fatal 4-Way doesn't need to be revisited, and the fact that they're going about it in 1v1 situations like how we're doing next week at NXT Revenge, I think is the best move that WWE could have done. Now, Tony going against Ethan Page, don't know if that's the right decision yet, but obviously whenever we get closer to next week's NXT, we'll do week 1 predictions going into NXT Revenge. But then we would see Sol Ruka face Izzy Dame. I think we all knew without a shadow of a doubt that Zarya was going to get involved in this match some way, somehow. With the culling at ringside, you never really know what's going to happen. And I did have a little... There were some rumors going around during, or a little bit before NXT, that Zarya could potentially join the culling one day. And I find that interesting, because I think that it's no doubt that Zarya is going to end up sinking without Sol Ruka. And that's obviously once the rivalry's done, that's once Sol moves up, and WWE can't use Sol Ruka as a grappling tool for Zarya. I think that Zarya will end up sinking due to the pressure that she cannot hold herself up to. And I think that's partially WWE's fault. They brought her in the wrong way. She had this sort of aura whenever she came into WWE. Everybody knew she was going to be a problem. Then they paired her up with the most innocent woman in NXT, Sol Ruka. Had her pair up with her made-up Cesaro Ruka, which was one of the best tag teams in the world. It was just so much fun to see them on TV, and now having them break up and having this very odd situation where you want Zarya to be able to float, and what we've seen on the mic by Zarya and Sol Ruka proves that both of them are going to be a serious threat and something to watch on the main roster. So I think that Zarya, it's going to be a 50-50 shot. Will she sink or swim? It's going to be her choice. WWE is going to put her in the position to swim, and if she doesn't sink, that would be best thing for her career. But if she sinks, it's gonna be her problem. It's gonna be something that she did on her own, because WWE is going to put Zarya in the position to thrive. But if Zarya doesn't thrive, we know it's Zarya's fault and Zarya's only, because WWE has clearly seen the potential. Hence the reason why they split her up from Sol Ruka. It's just the only possible option, and it's Zarya's choice whether she wants to thrive or if she wants to go downhill and sink. But either way, during this match between Sol and Izzy, we would end up seeing Zarya get involved, spear Sol Ruka, and end up having Izzy Dame hit her finisher and Sol in the main ring and have her pin her for the win. And having Zarya attack Sol here, I found that really interesting. Obviously, this solidifies to us that WWE is going to be revisiting Sol versus Zarya. I think that was no doubt in anybody's mind that we were going to be doing that. But it was definitely a up in the air thing, where it was going to be Sol Ruka going up to the main roster after this huge momentum win, or it was going to be them bringing Sol back down, having her face Zarya again, which looks like they're going to go with the second option, which I can't say I'm completely mad at. Obviously, it's an option that we all kind of expected, but we were just all having fingers crossed that it would be Sol Ruka going to the main roster. But if the main roster doesn't have an opportunity for Sol to thrive right now, I'm completely okay with her staying down in NXT, because the last thing I want is a great and probably one of the best talents in NXT, if not the best talent in NXT, be wasted on the main roster, which we've seen multiple times before. So I don't want her to be put in that position, and WWE waiting on her, I think, is probably the best opportunity right now, just because what we're seeing on TV, it doesn't look like there's a spot for Sol Ruka to fit into any storyline. And if there is, the last thing we want is for her to be thrown into a faction like how we're seeing with Roxanne Perez, which is kind of capped off her potential. So I think that it's going to be something that I'm actually happy that WWE is waiting for Sol Ruka, because I don't want that talent wasted. That's one of the talents that I don't want wasted in NXT. That's one of many. And I'm glad that they're waiting, because it's the best possible option that they could be doing. We would then see a match between Josh Briggs, Keanu Carver, and Jasper Troy. After last week's Stand and Deliver, we would see Josh Briggs be the special guest referee for Keanu and Jasper's match, where once again we would see Keanu win. Now, that's a weird story for sure. I thought that it's honestly just like a weird situation and all, because, I mean, you can clearly tell that it's going to be Keanu being the one that's going to be pushed out of this whole feud anyway. But now it's just to the fact of what is WWE going to do with Keanu after he gets pushed. Because he wins this triple threat tonight, he completely manhandles Josh Briggs to win. He throws him across the ring. Nobody does that, so a 6'10" guy just roaming around. So the fact that Keanu Carver is looking this strong, he's going to be a threat. But what WWE can do with him is going to be the most important part, because we know he has the potential to be great on the main roster. But I think for a guy like Keanu, we need to be looking more NXT than main roster. I think that NXT kind of has their eyes set on main roster right now instead of just focusing on what they're doing down in NXT. And I think they need to be looking about what he's doing currently rather than looking at what he could be doing on the main roster. There's going to be serious wins for Keanu in NXT. There's going to be a few NXT Championship wins, and I just hope he doesn't fall into the Tony D'Angelo story, because Tony D'Angelo truly has one of the worst stories in NXT history. He has stayed in the mid-card for his whole entire career, and he's been in NXT his whole entire career, and he's been one of the top guys in his career. He's been that top guy in NXT, and whenever we think he's going to go to the main roster, he never does. And now it's time to shine. It's his time to shine. He's the NXT champion, and now I'm just excited to see if he's still champion whenever Keanu gets to that point, because I would really love to see that match. That's kind of an Oba Brock situation for me. But either way, I really loved Keanu winning this. I think it was the best option, obviously. Still a little bit bummed out how we have Season 1 of LFG winner Jasper Troy being unutilized in NXT. We all thought he was going to be a huge threat, and WWE hasn't done anything with him since his debut in NXT, which I found very depressing, because I thought he was a really good talent. I thought he looked really good in the ring, and he was just a guy that you would look like you feared, especially with the chains around his neck and his entrance. I found him very powerful, but WWE never used him to his full ability, so he'll just go down as one of those giants in WWE that could have been used right, but never was. And that's just a fact of the matter, unless they flip things around right now. Sorry if I keep drinking water. I don't know why. Today I haven't drank a lot of water. So it just comes to be that whenever I do my review, I drink a lot of water. It is what it is. We just come on here and talk about wrestling and we just chill, talk about wrestling. We have to drink some water. We have to drink some water. You know what I mean? But I found that triple threat really fun. I loved the outcome of that, and I thought it was really interesting. Joe Hendry, Tony D'Angelo, Ricky Saints, and Ethan Page would face Dark State. And I think this was just more of a storyline building match. I love how it wasn't in the main event, which was my favorite part of this whole situation. Miles Bourne would end up coming over the barricade and attacking Deion Lennox after him attacking him at Stand and Deliver. And there was a little bit of an Easter egg that people I don't think is going to pay attention to, but I definitely picked up on, and that is how Deion Lennox hit Joe Hendry, then he backed up to the barricade, and Miles Bourne attacked him. And we've seen Miles and Joe team up in early 2026 already this year, and I think that we could be seeing Joe Hendry fall into a Dark State situation again. And it's very clear Miles Bourne is not finished with Dark State. It's going to be one of these situations again, like I said with Tony, where he's just wrapped into an endless loop with Dark State because there's nothing else for them to do. And I like how they kind of regained what they used to do in tonight's episode. They kind of jumped on those four men that was in that Stand and Deliver main event tonight in the opener, and I think that was a fun way to open the show, fun way to have it to where a match was announced. But having Miles Bourne attack Deion Lennox was a really smart move because now it gets the wheels turning in my mind at least. Will we be able to see Joe Hendry go back into the storyline with Miles Bourne and help him out? I found that really interesting. I think it's going to be really fun, once again, having them do that and everything. And at the end, Ethan taking the pin away from Tony was a great way to silence that. Obviously, that's the main reason why it's going to be Ethan versus Tony next week. But I still feel like that it was something that could have been played a little bit differently because I do want to see Joe versus Tony, and I don't think Ethan versus Tony is the way to go. But we all know it's going to get interrupted anyway, so there's really no reason for it to be a main event. But we'll see how it goes. Still excited for it. Still going to be a great match, but the ending is going to be something that I'll definitely be depressed by because I already know how it's going to end. But still, a good fatal four-way there, or an 8-man tag, and I think that was a cool thing to put into the middle of the show. I thought it was pretty cool, and I think that WWE just needs to utilize certain positions and utilize them better to where we can be seeing better storylines be made whenever it comes down to this and not have us guessing. I think sometimes obvious storylines are better, and in this situation I do think that's the case. I think they have you guessing too much, and I think that there needs to be more obvious situations going on, but it is what it is. A very fun part of NXT happening there. And then we get down to the debut of Chaz Starboy Hall, a guy who beat Cappuccino Jones and got his ID, or got his WWE contract, and I think that was just so cool. The fact that he already is on the NXT television is just great. Obviously, he would end up losing to Lexis King during this, but the fact that he looked just absolutely incredible. He looked incredible during this match. The athleticism, the in-ring skills were just perfect. He had the flippy style, which everybody loves. I know I love it. It's my favorite style in wrestling. Always has been, and many people would say, hey, technical is the best in wrestling. I agree. You can never get enough of those Kurt Angle type builds like Chad Gable, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be super fun to see those high-flying maneuvers, and having a guy like Starboy is just going to be so fun on NXT. You don't get a lot of these. I know we have EK Prosper. He's going to be one of those guys as well, but there's a lot of young guys coming up that are just going to be thriving in NXT, and Starboy and EK Prosper is going to be those two guys, especially Elio LaFleur whenever he comes back from injury. But like he said, it's going to be up to 6 months, which I'm really devastated by because he was looking really, really good. But either way, I found this really good. He's great in ring, and I think he's going to be a serious threat whenever he gets to that next level. Obviously, they're going to treat him kind of like a jobber these next few weeks whenever he's getting warmed up to NXT. But once he gets to the point where he's building momentum, he's going to be a threat for sure to that mid-card, especially Miles Bourne. Whenever we get his storylines moved out the way, it's going to be fun to see. We would then see Blake Monroe and Jackson Drake face Shiloh Hill and Tatum Paxley in a mixed person tag. The end of the match, we would see Tatum Paxley get pinned by Blake Monroe, which I thought was the most interesting part. We would see Tatum Paxley try to fend off Jackson Drake, but at the end of the day, the 2-on-1 situation would get the best of him, and Blake Monroe would end up pinning champion Tatum Paxley. So now it is very, very fun to see where this is going to go. Now we see the person who's been trying to hawk down that Women's North American Championship for the longest time, Blake Monroe, finally get the upper hand on North American champion Tatum Paxley. And I do think that Blake Monroe lost some of her momentum after she lost to Tatum Paxley at Stand and Deliver. I will admit that, but the fact that WWE had her bounce back like this and have her beat and pin champion Tatum Paxley was really important and really fun. And the fact that the Vanity Project made Blake her own custom title, I think, was a interesting part of the night, just because I feel like Blake needs to work for that title. But either way, really fun, a really fun way to have it continue, really fun way to have the storyline continue by having Blake Monroe pin champion. I think that's just a super fun touch. But yeah, I think that was really fun. We'll mention it here. NXT Revenge Week 1. This is the card so far. We'll have Sol Ruka versus Zarya and a last woman standing. After their match at Stand and Deliver, we would end up seeing Sol Ruka beat Zarya, but now we're seeing the rematch. I don't know why NXT Revenge is a thing. I feel like it's not needed. I feel like the NXT, for some reason, just booked this, even though we could have more storytelling over next week. But it is what it is. I think we definitely could have waited 2 weeks, but that's okay. And we would also end up seeing Tony versus Ethan next week. We would see Callie Armstrong's NXT debut, and we would see this new Speed Men's Champion be announced next week and confirmed. So all that will be announced and done next week. That's going to be the card for next week and in the main event. Your new Women's NXT Champion, Lola Vice, would cut a promo that I thought was great. Now, the crowd coming out and saying the "You Deserve It" chants to Lola 2 was great. First Cuban NXT Champion, just everything perfect. And we would kind of see Lola say, she would try to say that she isn't being confident, but she was clearly having some confidence during this promo. She would say that she actually earned this championship, and now she's not the girl who just came from the MMA background. That now she's an official WWE superstar that has won championships, and that proves that she can hang. So I thought that was a really important part of the night. I thought that was really fun and a good way to get Lola Vice in the mix. Then we would see Jacy Jayne interrupt former NXT champion, the champion who held the championship for 286 days, which is a super long reign. She would come out and say that, once again, kind of use the same thing as Tony, that she wants a rematch. Jacy would make it clear that she wants a rematch. Laney Rude would also get some time on the mic, which I think is really good. But the fact that the crowd booed every single second while Jacy Jayne was out there is so important. It's a part that many people are just going to skim over, but it's the part where you have to sit back as a fan and realize that Jacy Jayne has done her job as a heel, to where every time she comes out there, the fans are going to immensely boo her. They're going to boo her every time she steps foot out into a WWE arena, which is just going to be picture perfect going into the main roster, whether they treat her like that or not. Obviously, she's going to have more of that pull in NXT than on the main roster, but it should carry, and I think it's going to be so fun to see her on that main roster. Obviously, she's just itching at the service to get to that main roster. The Fatal Influence is very obviously holding her down just a little bit, but it's okay because I think that pull from the heel faction is going to go up to the main roster too. I think there's still going to be some of that heel tactic going up to the main roster. It's always going to be really fun. We would see Robert Stone come out and end up announcing that it'll be Jacy Jayne and Lola Vice next week, announced to this NXT Revenge card, which is just going to be great. I think it's going to be a heck of a match. Should we have done it this early? Absolutely not. I think that ending the segment out with Lola just laying out 1v3ing Fatal Influence definitely was not the thing to do. Obviously, you want your new champion standing tall, but if you're going to have Lola Vice beat Jacy Jayne next week, you've pretty much just plummeted Fatal Influence. And I hate that. I truly do. I think that Fatal Influence is still a force to be reckoned with in NXT, and having Lola Vice 1v3 here and lay out every single member of Fatal Influence to end NXT is not the way to go 100%. It's just not, and especially with Lola Vice pretty much 100% winning next week, there's no reason why you should be having her 1v2 or 1v3. I just found that very interesting, how she literally got the upper hand of every member of Fatal Influence, including former champion Jacy Jayne. So that was a weird way to end the show. I definitely think that WWE did not do the right thing whenever it comes to that. I think we should have just seen an old classic Fatal Influence beatdown, but it was a decent way to end the show, and I know a lot of people sleep on the promos of Lola Vice. She definitely just silenced it here. It was a classic promo where you just see after somebody wins a championship, this is our first NXT Women's Championship, and I absolutely loved it. It was a great promo. It was a promo that truly proved why she deserves to be in NXT. She deserves to be at the top spot, and she proved it in the promo tonight. If I didn't know who Lola Vice was and I read this promo and I listened to it and I really watched and analyzed her movements during the promo, you could just clearly tell she wants it bad. She knows that she is the best around. She knows that she wants to be the best around. She has the hunger to be the best, and the fact that she proved it during this promo is just so great. It was so cool to see. The promo was immaculate too, and I'll probably go back and watch it later because of just how emotional it was whenever Lola just kind of gets the grit of realizing that she, even whenever people doubted her, she still ended up pushing through and winning that championship, which was just the best part. JC would obviously point out that, hey, if it wasn't for the fluke win that you had or the fluke tie that you had to get into the match, then it wouldn't have ended up like this. But if JC loses next week, that's a far down momentum loser. That's going to be hard to swallow. But I'm really excited to see where WWE goes with all this going into NXT Revenge Week 1 next week. We'll obviously lay down our predictions whenever it gets closer to next week. But I hope y'all boys enjoyed this NXT review. I know I did. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're going to do more reviews every single day. Let me know down below what you thought about NXT, and I will see y'all boys in the next one. Deuces.